What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here, the Side Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm the Side, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Side Guys, Mr. Tad the Side. And Tad, it's weird. I
I'm
don't,
on
I
the
don't know
left
if
side. I like this.
I don't like this where it's
This
like
is great.
opposite here. It's like I'm just not used to seeing myself on the right side and
This
seeing
is
you on the
fantastic.
left
I
side.
love it. I love it. I am in charge forever now.
You really want that on
No,
you?
I do not. No, I really
Okay,
do not.
then
Do not.
Don't
Please,
even joke about those things.
please get your laptop fixed ASAP. I hate this.
Yeah, so really quick, just the reason that I'm on the right side today and Tad is on the left side. My laptop is getting some work done, so I'm using this my work laptop. So that's why Tad had to create the studio, which is what we record
It's been
in.
terrible.
There was a there's a lot of troubleshooting before we actually started, but luckily we got through it. And here we are now recording. And yeah, Tad, I mean, if you want it, you can
No,
have it.
I don't want it. I don't want
I will
it. Now,
get used to being on the right side. I will.
I will tell you one thing you did do wrong on the right side already. You misintroduced me. It is no longer my good friend, Tad Desai. It is my good friend and ultimate team champion, Tad Desai.
Oh.
Sir.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. So, in case you caught one of our episodes, I think it was 2 episodes ago, might be 3 episodes ago. I not exactly
I
remember
honestly thought it was
our
last episode.
exact. Me and Tad had a fun exercise where we drafted our ultimate teams based on the 2023 rosters. We introduced the random element of a picker wheel. So, I mean, if you haven't had a chance to go back and listen to that episode, it was a lot of fun, like landing on teams that we didn't want, and we still had to make choices for them.
Those Falcons are rough, man.
But ultimately, what we did is we decided to then use those teams, and Tad has a copy of Madden 23. He inputted the rosters for both teams there, and we ran.
By the way, that took me about like 3 hours. That was rough.
Yeah, Madden needs a better way to sort of like just build
so
your
inefficient.
rosters. It's just like, so we'll see what happens there in future iterations, but that's part of the reason why I don't play Madden. But anyways, so Tad ran a sim with both of our rosters there. We did a test sim, and then we did 2 more sims after that just to make sure everything. And just Tad, I mean, I'll let you speak on this because you obviously ran the sim, but just all of those iterations of the sim that you did, all completely different results and all completely different way how the game actually went out too. So I mean, it's just like explain to us about how those sims went.
Okay, so to clarify, because we will be putting screenshots out on Twitter of the scoring summary of the one, like we were like, okay, this is the real sim. So that real sim, I gave my roster to the Indianapolis Colts. And again, with Madden being inefficient, there was no way for me to give your roster to the Niners and have us play each other. There was just no way to do that. So I had to look at who the Colts played in week 1 last year, which, by the way, I totally blocked this from my memory, was the Houston Texans, where we tied 2020. And I should have known from then it was going to be a very long season. But anyway, so you had the Texans, I had the Colts.
Right.
Our test sim. So sim number 1, we went best of 3. Sim number 1, I was up 17-3 or 14-3 after the first quarter. I'm like, oh, I got this. Your team made a little bit of a comeback at half. You were down 14-6 or like 21-6, something like that. I was like, okay, no, I still got it. And then the third quarter, I was only up by like 3. And I'm like, uh-oh. And then you ended up actually beating my team by 10 points. You had like a 15 or 14 point fourth quarter. So I texted you, I go, yeah, my team's Falcons did. Like it was like a 28-3 situation where I was like, God damn it. I was like, thank God that was the test sim. So our second sim was the real one. Here's the best part. It was 3-3 at the end of the first quarter. 3-3.
Insane.
And it was ridiculous. And so that game ended up with me winning, I believe, 17-6.
I think that sounds accurate, yeah.
And we were going to end there. And then you were like, you know what? Let's see best of 3. And I was very nervous because I was like, oh, man, this gives you like the title to be like, or the chance to be like, well, in the 3-game simulation, not just that one. I was like, you know what? Screw it. I had enough confidence in my team. So we went into it. I blew you out. It was 24-6, the third one. And here was the interesting part. Mahomes and all the games except for the first one, except for the test sim, he did not do well. He threw 2 picks in the second sim. I believe he threw for 1 touchdown. In the third sim, 0 touchdowns and 3 picks. So my strategy of load up on pass rushers, thank you Tampa Bay, definitely paid off. And it was very, very helpful there. On the flip side, Justin Herbert also did not do all that well. So our strong defenses really gave our quarterbacks a lot of trouble. Here's a crucial decision I made. And our graphic's going to say another player's my starting running back, but at the last minute I made a change. Nick Chubb, I made my starting running back over Derrick Henry. So that was key because Nick Chubb in every single game had over 100 all-purpose yards in every single game that I ran. So Nick Chubb was the big one. What really screwed you was your offensive line. You did not take into account that while Zion Johnson is indeed good, Madden for some reason has him as a 73.
Yeah, that was the big thing after Tad was sort of texting me the play-by-play of all these Sims. I
Paris
was
Johnson
like,
was a 74, by the way.
exactly. So Paris Johnson was like a 74. You said Zion Johnson was like a 73. So I was
DJ
like,
Jones was a 79. Your
yeah.
defensive tackle.
So in reality, I think these players are a lot better and they sort of give more to the field and their teams, obviously, respectively. But then, yeah, just the Madden ratings, unfortunately, do not reflect that. So, yeah, I did not take that into account when we were choosing our team. So I think, Tad, you said that your team was 96 overall and my team, I think,
96,
was
yep.
like 93 overall.
93,
So,
yep.
like, I think that reflected, obviously. But it was a good exercise. It was a lot of fun. Obviously, I think we may decide to do this again maybe next offseason. We'll see about that. But yeah, so Tad is the ultimate champion, if that's what you want to call
Ultimate,
it.
I like it. Double ultimate champion. Let's run with it. When do I get my trophy?
Your trophy is you get to be the
Ooh,
host permanently.
no, that's not a trophy. What about this as a reward? Chauncey does not get to punish me.
Oh, that is still happening. That is
Damn it.
still happening for sure. So yeah, make sure you guys tune in to probably next week's episodes, one of them, because
We'll
I think
figure out
that is what
sometime.
is going to be
Oh,
revealed
son
what
of a
Tad's
bitch.
punishment
I
is.
don't
And
even know what this is. Not a bit. I don't even know what it is yet.
yeah,
Like,
and
I
we'll
truly,
we'll explain like why Tad is being punished by our good friend Chauncey Talese of LA Podfidential. We'll sort of explain all that too before he actually lays out the punishment for Tad. But Tad, I think let's get into today's episode. I
By the
think
way,
we've
Chauncey,
got
you're our favorite guest by a mile. I love you, man. You're the best, man.
So yeah, let's get into today's episode, Tad. So if our viewers and our listeners remember last week's episode, we were talking about fantasy players that were in on. So maybe they had, a bad season, but all of a sudden we just like their situation this year in 2023. So that's why we're buying into them. They were injured. I mean, just any different situations as to why we're sort of super into them. So now we're doing the opposite. So now we're going to be talking about players that were just completely out on. So maybe they had a sensational season. It's just like, oh, you got the regression. It's just not going to be the same. Maybe they land in a situation where, we talked about this before. Like maybe it's a situation where it's like Kenneth Walker the third. I was super high on him, but now they drafted Zach Charbonnet. So it's like, I don't know if I'm as high on Kenneth Walker the third anymore. So it's like, it's going to be situations like that where they got added people in their respective position groups. So yeah, today's episode, we're going to talk about players that we're out on. So Tad, I'm going to pass it to you here first. Who's a guy in 2023 that you're just not as high on? You're probably going to avoid unless you get excellent draft value in your fantasy draft, maybe sort of thing. But just like, he's a guy that you're just, yeah, I don't think I'm going to go with him this year.
It was funny because this guy wasn't even on my radar for this episode until I started doing research for the last episode. Like you said, with the players we're in on. And yes, I'll admit, I look at articles for candidate ideas. And when I see, top 10 breakout candidates here, I try to take one from that list and run with my own statistics. But this guy kept popping up again and again and again in all of these lists. And it made zero sense to me. And then, like I said, so I took that, put him on my list for this episode, did my own research. And after my own research, I was like, oh, yeah, no, this guy, I'm staying away from him. It's Christian Watson. So many people have him picked to be a breakout candidate. I'm the complete opposite. I think he is going to bust. I don't think he's going to bust hard, but let's just break down what he did last year. Okay. So the reason a lot of people are saying he's going to be a good candidate next year is because he did have, and I will not take anything away from this, a monster 4-game stretch where he put up 15 plus points straight 15 plus point performances. That was amazing. I tried very hard to trade for him at the time. Can't remember if I landed him or not, but it was a good stretch. But the problem is, after and before those 4 games, he only put up 10 points or more once the entire season. And that was with Aaron Rodgers. keep in
Yep.
mind. So now that he has Jordan Love, who with the larger sample size of 2021, because he did play a couple games before that, but 2021 is where he really played a couple games, sub 60% completion rate, which is I always look for a high completion rate with my quarterbacks. That's like my ERA with pitchers. It's like that is my go-to stat. He has 68 QBR. So I don't think Watson's going to be fantasy relevant, but if I'm drafting him in second or third round, expecting like, hey, he has wide receiver 1 potential, absolutely not. I'm taking him as a wavering flex option with maybe the potential to get to wide receiver 2 if Jordan Love proves me wrong. But like honestly, I am staying away from Watson until at least the 4th round, and I think in most leagues he's going to be gone by then.
The rough thing with Watson, I think just the biggest thing is just, we keep hammering this home, but it's still the main question in Green Bay. What are we going to expect from Jordan Love? Like, I
Nothing
mean,
good. He's not a good quarterback. He's not.
well,
I'm convinced
you
of that.
never know. You never know, right? Because I mean, obviously, we saw this, with previous quarterbacks in the past, where it's just like we don't see it as well. Like, honestly, Patrick Mahomes, he started that very
Don't.
last game for
No.
Kansas City. He looked terrible. All of a sudden, he came the next season. He became who we see today, right? So I mean, it's like obviously we saw the opposite too, where Green Bay, specifically Green Bay, they have Matt Flynn, who's racking up all these
Yeah,
numbers.
that's
Seattle paid a bunch of money for him. He was not the same guy. That's obviously why Russell Wilson was able to beat him out. So here's a situation where yes, all sides are sort of pointing towards just Jordan Love not being all that great, but you never know. Maybe there's some sort of like, now that Aaron Rodgers is gone, it sort of like can clear everything and he's just the guy and he can sort of run with it, sort of thing. But just regardless, we don't know how he's going to perform. And because of that, it's hard to trust Christian Watson, who is relatively more of a deep threat. He's that home run option in their offense, right? He's not that guy who's going to run like these quick 5-yard outs to move the
That's
chains.
Romeo Dobbs.
Yeah, exactly. That they have other receivers on their roster who can do that. They just drafted Jaden Reed, who could easily do that as well.
Yep,
So I
that's
mean,
another good one.
he's not the guy who's going to be doing those things. He's those guys who's going to be running those like 10, 15-yard deep routes, those curl routes, those post routes, whatever you want to call them. And so if Jordan Love is not able to detect that and go through his progressions well enough, and big thing, Tad, Green Bay has had issues with their offensive line last season, actually last 2 seasons. Aaron Rodgers was able to make up for that because of his escapability to get out of the pocket and make some plays, obviously. But I don't know if Jordan Love can. So that's the biggest question mark for me. So yeah, when you're relying on a home run threat and Christian Watson with the unproven quarterback, I'm automatically worried. So yeah, I'm surprised you're even saying 4th round. I wouldn't even touch him until maybe the 6th
Wow.
round. Yeah.
Okay. Well, real quick, because I did misspeak, shocker. It was Jordan Love's bigger sample size was 2021 compared to 2022. 2022 was his smaller sample size, not the year before. But to nip a bud in the whole Patrick Mahomes comparison, did Patrick Mahomes throw 62 passes in that game?
No, I know.
No, so we have a larger sample size. The fact that Jordan Love sucks. Now, your Matt Flynn point, I got nothing on that. That's a great counter because Matt Flynn, we did have a large sample size with that. But to be fair, we never knew how that would work out because it just so happened they took Russell Wilson. Matt Flynn never got a shot. How about that for a hot take? But yep, no, I mean, I agree with you. It's just Watson as a breakout candidate. I don't like that. I'm very surprised as a narrative that is being pushed by, I feel like Fox News right now. That's a narrative being pushed by a lot of these like big fantasy media types. I don't understand where that trust is coming from. So Christian Watson, I'm staying away from. Honestly, a little bonus pick. Aaron Jones was actually my original pick for this episode, but it's just basically anybody in the Packers offense until we get a feel for Jordan Love. I'm really staying away from the Packers offense, and especially stay away from the tight ends because who knows which rookie is going to come out as the winner, and until that becomes clear, not touch him.
No, that's fair. That's fair. And I've told you before, just like rookie tight ends, for some reason, the transition takes a little bit longer. So I'm not trusting either of them just yet as well. Because like you said, they got good competition between the two of them with Luke Musgrave and then, of course, Tucker Kraft taking a little bit later than that. And so, yeah, very interesting situation. It's very much a wait and see with that entire offense. So, yeah, I don't blame you if you're a little bit hesitant to draft anybody or not to draft anybody in that offense.
Yeah.
So,
all right,
very,
Amir,
very fair.
who you got?
So we're actually sort of talking about this team a little bit earlier. We're talking about Seattle with Matt Flynn and Russell Wilson, all these guys, right? So I'm going back to Seattle. So it's the guy that replaced Russell Wilson, Geno Smith.
All right.
I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it, unfortunately. So obviously, Geno Smith, one of the biggest stories of the 2022 NFL season with his rejuvenated career, sparking Seattle when everybody thought Seattle was just going to be completely out of it, the playoff picture, just rebuilding, figuring out a new system there. But hey, he was able to get them through into a playoff spot. Fortunately, they lost in their very first game, but still, just the fact that they made the playoffs, that's saying so much about the Seattle team and Geno Smith, respectively. I know you got a
You
smirk
you
on your
were you
face.
were you were you were soft on the and the unfortunately there, and I don't think that was on accident.
No, of course not. But he was able to get to the Pro Bowl, obviously. He also was rewarded in the offseason because he only signed a 1-year deal with Seattle. He was rewarded in the offseason with a 3-year deal worth over $75 million. This is all great. The Seattle Seahawks clearly are buying in on this guy, Tad, because they didn't draft anybody to
No, I
have
was
him as
shocked
a
by that.
backup. All they have is Drew Lock, and then in the undrafted free agent signing period, they signed Holton Allers. Um, I don't know
Mm,
how much we're going to
mm.
see about him, but
Where'd
just,
he go
yeah,
to
so he's
school?
there. I think Eastern Carolina, if I remember
Oh God,
correctly.
no.
So
Yeah, I have no idea.
I could be wrong on that one. So, but anyway, so this is just showing good faith. They really trust him to run this offense. But for me, I just don't see it being as promising in fantasy circles because here's the big thing, Tad. During the final 5 weeks of the season, and I know they don't count playoff games for fantasy football, but in this case, I wanted to tack on that extra game as well. It was not the same as those first 12 games. So his stats in the first, like I'd say, 3 quarters of the season, like I said, those first 12 games, Smith was stellar. 3,169 passing yards, 22 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and a 72% completion rate. Like, that's
What I
insane.
just say about completion rate? That's my go-to.
Exactly. Average 17.3 fantasy points per game, which is pretty solid for a starting quarterback. Now let's look at those final 5 regular season games and then that postseason game. 1,366 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So in that same span, he still threw 6 interceptions, 65% completion rate. So it really dropped. His average fantasy points per game dropped to 15.8. So, I mean, teams started to pick up on his tendencies. Maybe the roster, maybe it's just like, the longevity, like maybe he's not used to that. I don't know what it was, but clearly we saw a drop off in production when it mattered most, especially those final 5 games. And then obviously the playoff game, you just didn't see the same Geno Smith that we saw previously. So, Tad, I don't know if you know this. He was ranked as the 5th best fantasy quarterback
Yep.
in PPR
Mm-hmm.
leagues. And that's great, but I mean, I actually brought him up last week's episode. Justin Herbert, I think, is going to slide into the top 5. He's going to push him out. Honestly, I'm not seeing a similar season from last year. I think he's going to fall out of the top 5. I think he's going to fall out of the top 10. I think there's going to be a lot of other quarterbacks that are going to jump into that top 10 that were not there. Lamar Jackson was hurt for majority of last year. I bet you he's going to go into the top 10. Like I talked about, Justin Herbert's going to be in the top 10. There's a bunch of other guys that I like that were not in the top 10 due to injuries, just poor performance, what have you, that I think are going to slide to the top 10, and Geno Smith is going to slide out because just based on what I saw last year down the stretch, I think that's more of the Geno Smith that we're going to see heading into this season in 2023. And Tad, I'm going to read off their schedule here to end the fantasy regular season. So this is
Okay.
weeks 12 to 17. They play the Niners. Then they play the Cowboys. Then they play the Niners again. Then they play the Eagles.
Ooh.
Then they play the Titans. I know what you want to say about the Titans, but the Titans actually have a pretty good defense.
No, they don't.
Titans
Shut
have a
up.
pretty good defense. I got to give it there. And then
No,
they
they
finish
don't.
with the Steelers in week 17.
Oh, yeah,
So
that's right. Good
they
Lord.
it's a rough stretch.
What did
down
Seattle do to the NFL? My God.
So they're going to end the fantasy regular season on a very brutal stretch there where it's just like, I don't know if I'm going to trust Geno Smith during those final weeks. So maybe you want to use him as a streaming option earlier in the season. Maybe he's going to capture some of that magic he had in 2022. But 100% once like you're starting getting close to the fantasy playoffs, I am dropping him and I'm going in a different direction, or I'm going to try and make a trade while the value is hot. Because, yeah, for me personally, I'm not touching Geno Smith at all. But if you
Wow.
decide to take a chance there, I recommend 100% that's like you have a plan in place because once week 12 rolls along, he is not going to be the same guy. So you definitely want to get him off your roster there. But for me, like I said, I'm completely out of Geno Smith.
Wow. See, I'm not completely out on him. It was funny because when Amur, as per usual, got his picks in first, and Geno Smith was actually going to be my other pick. It was going to be Aaron Jones and Geno Smith. And after Amur made the pick, I was kind of thinking of like, okay, how do I, agree with him and everything? The more I thought on it, the more I'm like, maybe we're being too harsh on him, because other than a weak offensive line, there's really no reason for him not to succeed. He has DK Metcalf, he has Tyler Lockett, now he has Jackson Smith-Njigba, who I considered the top receiver in the draft. They have Zach Charbonnet, they have Kenneth Walker, also DJ Dallas, also a pretty solid like backup running back there. So that is a very good deep offense. The only thing with Geno Smith, I feel like people are like, oh yeah, no, it's just we're like, okay, it was a flash in the pan. There's no way Geno Smith is good now. Like, we're still in disbelief that he could, after all this time, finally turn into a viable starting option at quarterback. But like I said, so I agree with you. I'd be wary of Geno. Now, I'm not going to go all the way with you where it's like, oh, I wouldn't touch him. For me, I think he's a fascinating QB2 prospect of like, okay, yeah, this is a guy, like you said, like maybe he really kills in the beginning of the season. People are like, he's legit and great. You have your backup quarterback for if your guy gets hurt or if your guy, is doing really well. And now you have a trade asset and Geno Smith. Now, it was funny because I was going to say QB2, you can hold on. But after racking off that late season schedule, no, I'm right there with you. Like that is an asset you either like keep on, and that's why paying attention to bye weeks is important. If your quarterback has a bye week 13, 14, 15, stay away from him. I'm right there with you. Like, no. If your quarterback has bye week in like week 4 or 5, I think like I said before, that's a great option. Take Geno Smith as your QB2, have him ride the bench. If he sucks, great. Drop him after 3 weeks. No harm, no foul. But if he does really well, I mean, look, a big time quarterback goes down every year. That's why I'm a big believer of stashing QB on your bench. Some people don't do that. I don't understand why, because it's best case scenario. Your guy goes down, you got somebody else there. Somebody else's guy goes down. Well, now you have a giant piece of trade leverage right over that person. So I think Geno Smith is a fine late round candidate. I don't think he's untouchable. I think that was a little strong, but I definitely think if people are expecting him to finish in the top 5, like you said, like he did last year, that's being unreasonable. I don't see him repeating that performance. But again, with me being softer on him, I could see him like, kind of knocking on the door at 10 as like QB 11, QB 12 there.
Could be. But yeah, like I said, for me, I don't see it. I don't see him replicating the same thing. So we'll see how it all plays out there. So Tad, let's get to our next players here. So who's another guy that you're just out on in 2023?
I'm going to do the thing.
See, I almost did.
I'm scared.
I almost did because I know which player you're going to bring up here. I almost did, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to avoid it.
I'm doing the thing.
I'm avoiding the landmine here. Yep. Tad is stepping on it, so we'll see exactly what's going to happen here.
I'm hoping it's a dud. Much like this player I'm predicting will be a dud. Is that strong? But I am not all in on Derrick Henry anymore. I don't think Derrick Henry. Oh God. But yeah, just dove right in there. But
you have stepped on the landmine. You have heard the click.
Now
it's just a matter of like as soon as you lift your foot, what is going to happen?
We'll see around week 8. So great, I'm gonna be on this landmine for about 6 months. But no, I mean, it's not that I think Derrick Henry is going to be a fantasy bust. Let's clarify that. Notice how that does not say. Notice how that does not say NFL fantasy player bust. I think he will still be.
That'll be a later episode.
Absolutely. 100% that'll be a later episode. I think he will still easily be a top 10 fantasy running back. I don't know if he's still a top 5 fantasy running back, and it's largely by factors outside of his control. You look at what the Titans did this offseason. It was funny because I typed in like Titans offseason losses to like make sure I got everybody. First result that popped up was like, I don't know, not Fantasy Pros, Sporting News or something with the headline, Titans had the worst offseason in the NFL. And I was like, yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ignore all their losses on the defensive side, which I think you're underrating when you're saying they still have a good defense because they lost a lot of talent on defense. But anyway, they lost more talent on the offensive line. And Taylor Lewan, Nate Davis, and Ben Jones, all of those guys were really good. And they cut or traded all of them. So, and I can already hear Titans fans going, well, we drafted Skronsky. I thought you were really high on Skronsky. I am, and I still am. But guess what? And you know what?
It's one guy. Hold
on. Because I actually did run these numbers twice over. Because it's well documented how bad I am at math. Now, yeah, like you said, that's one guy. Okay. And I listed 3 guys. So if we take one guy to replace 3 guys, that leaves 2 guys. I've run this multiple times. I have confirmed this. I checked with the math teacher before summer started. Those numbers are in fact correct, that there are still 2 giant holes on that Titans offensive line. So we got that to worry about. We've got the fact they just turned 29 in January to worry about, because people are going to be like, oh, he's Derrick Henry. He's so big. He's a physical freak. If I had told you 4 years ago that Todd Gurley was going to have a rapid drop off, people also would have been calling me insane. Todd Gurley went from a top fantasy running back to out of the league within 2 or 3 years. So I'm not saying Derrick Henry is going to have that rapid of a drop off, but every running back has a drop off. I mean, Adrian Peterson's, I guess, the exception to the rule, but every other running back eventually starts dropping off. And at 29, just statistically, that just starts happening for most running backs at that age. And here's another thing that people need to remember. The trade rumors were rampant with Derrick Henry. I do think that like there were calls made, and like some talks got close. I 100% believe that. I'm guessing the Titans were asking for a first round pick. No one was willing to give them that, which tells you about the rest of the league's confidence in Derrick Henry as well. So overall, and you gotta remember, like, I'm not saying that Derrick Henry is a diva or anything, but when you had those rumors surrounding you, I had the same concerns with Dalvin Cook, although apparently he may get moved in the next couple days. Where, like, if you know your team doesn't really want you anymore, do you play as hard for them? And should you? Like, I don't really blame a player if, like, I'm out in the headlines of like being a trade target. I'm like, fuck you, dude. Like, why don't you want me anymore? So I just think there are a lot of exterior forces at work that's going to hamper Henry's ability to stay a totally like ironclad fantasy option. I think he'll still have these weeks where he goes off for 20 or 30 points, but I think we're going to start seeing more of those 8-10 point performances where it's like, oh man, where is he? So do I see Derrick Henry as a first round pick? Yes, but in the late first round, anyone takes in top 5, I think that's a mistake.
Once again, I think it's just like, I thought about this the past couple of seasons. Like last season, I was like, okay, I think we're going to see the drop off now. He still had a fantastic season. The season before, I think I was a little bit more like, I was on the fence. I was like, he could be good, he could be bad. He had a fantastic season. And I'm doing the same thing this year, where it's just like, I really don't know. And everything that you brought up made a ton of sense. One other thing that I want to bring up too is just that with the question marks surrounding their passing offense, we talked about this, Tad, they added very little to their receiving options as far as their tight ends are concerned, their receivers are concerned, right? So it's just like, who are they going to be throwing to? So it's like, if you don't have to worry about the passing offense, then you can start focus more.
Burks? What's that tight end? What's that tight end that you love so much? I thought he was the next coming.
Like I love Chixaquango too, but it's just like there's only 2 guys. You need more options in a
one and a half guys. The tight end sucks.
You wait and see on that.
I will die on this hill gladly.
But regardless, just the fact that whether it's 1.5, whether it's 2, it really doesn't matter. They just don't have enough options in that passing offense. So it's just like you can't rely on that as much then. And like I talked about, it's a pass first league. You need more passing options. So if defenses can sort of ignore the passing offense for Tennessee and they just focus on Derrick Henry. I know this has sort of happened in the past where they drop in 8-9 man boxes and he still finds a way. Like, I mean, he's able to break through these boxes too. But just, I'm wondering, like you said, with the age being a factor now, the offensive line being a factor now, it's like with Mike Vrabel's coaching position possibly being on the hot seat now, it's like, is that going to play a factor as far as how this team is going to be run too? It's just like you said, the trade rumors, it's just like a lot of things are sort of coming to play now where it's just like, it's a lot harder to trust him, but like I said, he finds a way. I just don't understand it. It's one of those things where it's just
I think what you mean is life finds a way.
Exactly.
Nailed that one. Nailed it.
100%. He just finds a way to get it done. Like, I'm just curious to see whether this is finally going to be the year that is just like too many sort of, like you said, external factors, exterior factors, whatever word you use there, is just going to come
external. They mean the same thing.
I know. I just say whatever word you use there. I'm just using whatever. So I think I'm wondering if just like all of that culmination is just going to affect this season a lot more this season. But here's the one thing I will throw in, like, they are talking about trade rumors. So it's like, eventually, if they do get to the midway point and they're like, 2-9 or whatever, like, I don't know what the trade deadline is. Maybe that's a little bit too high or whatever, but just like, they have a terrible roster. Like, maybe they're like 4 or 5 games under 500 at that point. Maybe they start discussing trading Derrick Henry, and depending on where he lands, that will then possibly shoot his stock back up, right?
Yes, that is a different discussion. It's Christian McCaffrey with the Panthers last year. Like, I didn't think that his value would be that good with the Panthers. It was good, not great with the Panthers. Gets traded to San Francisco. All of a sudden, still remember that live episode we did where we were just like, holy shit, this guy
Yeah,
is fancy gold right now.
that
I
was
still,
insane.
after we were done with that episode at 1 a.m. Central Time, I sent on a weekday. I sent in a trade request to the guy who had McCaffrey because I was hoping that he would just accept it without
Yeah.
realizing that he had been traded. It did not work.
No, of course not.
And
Of
it was
course
also movie day for the kids after that.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, he's my running back 1 this year. Like, he's my number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, that'll be another episode. Is like, like
Yeah, that's an episode down the road, but like I said,
damn,
spoiler alert, I think he's my number 1 overall pick this year.
that's tough to argue against because yeah, especially if you're PPR, there's no argument.
Yeah. 100%,
There's no argument.
100%. But just, yeah, I think just to close out this Derrick Henry thing is just like, I think I probably agree with you. I don't know if I like him as a top 5, but I still like him in the first round. I think that's still safe to say that he's a first round running back.
Yeah, for me, it's like borderline. Like, I think if
Okay.
you're, if you're like the 8th man in 10-man league and you take him at 8, I'm not gonna be like, oh, that was a mistake, but I am gonna be like, there's a little bit more risk there than I think you're taking. But I think like there are gonna be some people out there, especially the more casual fans, who still take him number 3, and I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, that's
I
fair.
take Jonathan Taylor over Derrick Henry.
Ooh, that's interesting.
How about that? Absolutely no bias involved there.
But yeah, so Derrick Henry is very much like a question mark for me. I am a little bit more down on him than previous seasons, but maybe not as much as you. Like, I still have a little bit of faith because, like I said, he finds a way to get it done, and I just don't understand how he does it. And so, like I said, with the potential trade as well, like that sort of factors into my decision. So I still value him as a running back 1, but yeah, maybe top 5. I don't, maybe not so much now, but
All right,
I'm
final
stick with the
player.
running
Who
back.
you got?
I'm sticking at the running back position as
Got-
well. I'm going to the AFC East. I'm going to the New England Patriots, and I'm going with Ramondre Stevenson. I'm just
Okay.
not as high on him this year. So finished as the 7th best running back in PPR leagues tab with 249.1 fantasy points. Impressive. Very impressive numbers. Obviously, I can understand why people heading into 2023, like I said, the more casual fans, they may look at the stats and be like, oh, hey, this guy did fantastic. I'm going to treat him as my RB1.
No,
I
don't
think
do that. Don't do
that's
that.
exactly. I'm heading into 2023. I just don't know if I could trust him the same way because Damian Harris is gone. Sure, that sort of opens up a little bit of a pathway for Ramondre Stevenson to have a good season because you have to remember Damian Harris, had a couple injuries last season too, which allowed Ramondre Stevenson to get more touches, to get more playing time in that offense, which sort of led to a successful finish at number 7 in PPR leagues, right? But added to the running back room now, Ty Montgomery was signed. He's a very versatile option in the pass game as well as the running game. James Robinson, he is signed by the New England Patriots, so he is going to make a difference as well at the running back. Also, let's not forget they have holdovers. JJ Taylor got some touches for them last year as well, and also they drafted Pierre Strong Jr. a couple seasons ago, so he's going to be a factor too.
It's Pierre Strong.
So
flourish on it.
There's a lot of folks in that running back group now to affect Ramondre Stevenson. So I was like, I don't know if I can trust him as the primary. Like, okay, maybe he's still going to be the quote unquote primary option, but just the way New England use their running backs is just like you don't know who is going to be the primary option week to week. Like I said, part of the reason why he got so many touches last year, David Harris got hurt. They didn't have as many options behind him, so Ramondre Stevenson got a lot more of the work right now. But with all the signings that they made, I think that's a reason as to like New England wants to sort of mix it up. They want to give a different factor depending on the situation. So I don't know if he's going to get as many touches, Tad, because last season he had 279 touches. So that's both rushing and receiving targets as well. That led to a solid performance. The season before, when he was a rookie, he only had 147. And because of that, he finished as the 36th best fantasy running back in PPR leagues. That same season, Damian Harris had 220 touches in that offense. He finished as the 8th best running back in PPR league. So it sort of speaks to the factor that's like the more touches you get in this offense, probably the more successful you're going to be. That's pretty similar trend you're going to see with any team, right? So, but just like I said, with the crowded backfield that they have there in New England, I really don't think Ramondre Stevenson is going to sniff 200 touches in this offense. I think he's going to get close, but I think it's really going to be more of a balancing act between himself. James Robinson's going to get a lot of the rushing attempts. Ty Montgomery is probably going to steal a lot of the passing attempts, and then they're going to sort of mix in JJ Taylor and Pierre Strong a little bit along the way too. So it's just like I don't trust him to have that volume as much as he had last season, which led to him finishing as number 7, right? Also, not a huge fan of their schedule to open out the season because Tad, in their
You did a
first
lot
8
of
weeks,
schedule research. I'm impressed by you. That's smart.
looking at their schedule in the first 8 weeks, so this is
First
just the
8 weeks,
very
okay.
beginning of the season. They play
Kicking
the
it off.
Eagles, good defense.
Rough
They
draw.
play the Dolphins, they have a pretty good
Yeah, that's
defense.
pretty good.
The Jets, they have a good defense.
Yeah, we'll
The
see.
Cowboys, they have a good defense.
No, they
The
don't.
Saints, they have a good defense.
No, they
The
don't.
Raiders, okay, the Raiders I'll sort of give you,
Yeah, no,
they sort of
no,
go
no.
hit or miss there. The Bills, they have a good
Hey, yeah,
defense.
no,
And then
we'll
they
argue
go
that
with
one.
the Dolphins again to close out their
Yeah.
week 8. So it's just like, I don't know how much I trust this offense in general to play in those first 8 weeks against some of these, good defenses, some of them top level defenses, right? And then also, I think just the biggest thing, the biggest crux that we're sort of looking at here, very similar to what we're talking about with Green Bay. Yes, they signed Bill O'Brien to sort of fix this offense, but that doesn't change a lot of the fact that just Mac Jones does not look good under
No, he looks terrible. I think I don't know if I ever put this out on the show before, but me and my friends have a conspiracy theory that Belichick purposely benched Zappy again because he was like, I don't want to
Yes,
pressure him
we've
too
brought this up
much.
before. We've
Okay.
brought this up before.
And I'm still bought into that where I think Zappy is Belichick's guy. I think Zappy is going to come out of the preseason as the Patriots starter.
And that's fair, but just like we saw him struggle at times too.
Don't
Bailey
you doubt
Zappi,
Zappy.
that is too.
Don't
So
you
it's like
doubt
he's
Zappy.
been
Don't do it.
good, but
Don't
he
you do
hasn't
the
been
thing.
great either.
Nope.
So it's just like I don't know if I trust him to lead an offense either. So regardless of what it is, there's question marks at the quarterback position, and very similar to what we were talking about with Tennessee, where it's just like I don't know what's going to happen at their quarterback position and their passing offense. So that leads to the defenses focusing more on the running game. So I bet you they're going to limit more of what the Patriots can do on offense, whether it's running the ball or whether it's passing the ball. So it's just like that's another factor as far as that I want to throw in there, which is why I'm not as high on Ramondre Stevenson. Now, like I said, I do like him as quote unquote the primary option in his backfield. So, like I said, I'm not going to be completely out on him like I am with Geno Smith, but just like I'm drinking him a lot lower of a value than sort of where he's going. So it's like where I see him there, I see him going maybe like, fourth or fifth round on average. So I may be taking him around later. So probably the 6th or 7th round if he's still there in value. Cause yeah, I think I like him, like I said, to be an RB2 on my roster, maybe a flex option, but he's not going to be an RB1 by any means because of all those factors I laid out.
So there's a great stat to actually back up everything you just said that I found. So
back up. Okay.
Yep, to back up, because I completely agree with everything you just said. No disagreements.
Just really quick
notes.
for the viewers and the listeners out there. Tad said I have a fantastic stat on Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah.
So I thought
this is
it was
it's
to
not,
counter
it's
everything
not,
that I said.
It's not about Stevenson. It's about the Patriots, though. Exactly like what you said.
Okay.
So I went into this research, and every scientist is like, you don't go in expecting a result. Yeah, fuck you. But I went in expecting to find scientists do good, but don't tell me how to do my fantasy football research. But I was like, you know what? I wonder the last time the Patriots had back-to-back, leading rushers who was the same player. Yeah, it was Damian Harris like 3 years ago. So I was like, all right, well, there goes that. And so I was looking, through their books. And I kind of know it through their books as if I'm some kind of accountant.
Like you're a librarian.
Yeah, like I'm the SEC. I'm like, yeah. But I did kind of make that sound though. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I did find something.
Yeah, but it's more of like this, where you're looking on a screen.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's cooler if I'm like in the basement of my apartment doing it though. I did notice something interesting is, a couple times over the past, decades, they did have back-to-back rushers be the same player from season to season. But Amir, do you want to guess the last time or player? I'll give you either one. The Patriots had a back-to-back leading rusher who was the same player that went over 1,000 yards. Back-to-back seasons.
Over 1,000 yards in back-to-back seasons. The last player to do that?
The last player to do that for the Patriots.
This is rushing yards, right? Not
rushing
scrimmage yards?
Yes. No. Yeah. Not all purpose, solely rushing yards.
I'm going to say Lawrence Maroney.
See, it's funny you should say that because that was going to be my pick too. It was Curtis Martin in 1996 and 1997.
Part of me thought it was going to be one of those older running backs. So I was like, no, I think this might be a trick question. Maybe it's more recent. So I was like, I was going to go with Lawrence Maroney. But I also thought of like Corey Dillon. I also thought of potentially Curtis Martin. But I was like, no, I'm going to go with Lawrence Maroney. So
96, 97 was the last time they've had a leading rusher go for over 1,000 yards in consecutive seasons. So it's literally been the Patriot way for over 2 decades now where I haven't trusted that backfield since I started playing fantasy football. So you know what? funny quick story is when they did those, what I later learned were fake, which was very heartbreaking to learn that these were faked. But with that fantasy football commercial where Lawrence Maroney like dove through the car. I don't know if you
Oh
remember that
yeah,
one.
yep.
Yeah,
Oh, I love
yeah.
those commercials. Those are
I know.
fantastic.
So did I. And I saw that as a kid, and I was just like, I need to have this guy on my roster. So I literally drafted him solely because of that commercial. Great marketing. But I was sorely disappointed. Ever since then, I'm like, I don't trust a single goddamn Patriot running back. So I'm actually a little tougher on Stevenson than you. I don't see him as running back 2 option at all. I see him as a bench.
Wow.
I see him as he's draftable for sure. Just for you, like you said, maybe this is the year. They're like, yeah, Stevenson is our guy, but I don't see that happening. But on the off chance I'm wrong, he's definitely worth a bench spot. But that is a player you draft in later rounds going, dear God, please don't like force me to put you in my flex. Because it's just like that. He's an injury handcuff, basically. Like if a lot of my guys go down, he's better than anyone else on the waiver wire. Not by much, but he's better. So might as well run with it. But no, I'm not drafting him to be my starting lineup at all.
Interesting. Wow. So yeah, I'm not that negative on him. It's just like, yeah, I do not trust him. Like I said, because he finished 7th, and like you said, the more casual player may look at that and be like, okay, this is a guy that I could trust. I could draft him in one of the first 3 rounds, possibly. I'm like, no, do not do that.
Nope.
So I think you need to treat this guy as, like I said, for me, an RB2, definitely a flex play. But yeah, for you, probably like a first off the bench sort of type of guy.
Yeah.
Maybe even the back end of the bench sort of thing. But just like, yeah, I could sort of see that option as well. But just yeah, for you to think that Ramondre Stevenson is going to replicate the season that he had last year, I don't see it panning out. I really don't at all.
Stay away from him. Stay away from him.
Exactly. So those are guys that were out on, like we talked about earlier. We also did an episode that were players that were in on. So make sure you check out that episode. Obviously, you know, in case you missed any of our episodes, best way you can find us and best way you can interact with us on everything that we're doing. You see the ticker down below. It's coming right.
I put that up. I did it right. That's all.
Make sure you follow us on all our social media handles. You see us there on Twitter. You can find me at ArborTheSide23. You can find Ted at TedTheSide94. You can find the show handle at The Decide Guys. And of course, we're on Instagram at The Decide Guys as well. We'll be posting graphics for our Madden Sim rosters so you can fully see all the rosters that we picked
summary,
there.
everything.
Like Tad said, he took some screenshots, so he'll be posting those as well as far as how the scoring went, how did all the players do, all that stuff. So that's all going to be on Instagram as well as on Twitter. Like we talked about, you know, we're dropping episodes as often as we can during the summer. It is the summer, so we may take, you know, a little bit of time off here. Obviously, 4th of July, Ted likes to go home and visit his family, so we may not have an episode there, or maybe only one. So we'll see about that. But just
we'll try to early record one. We'll figure something out.
We'll figure it out. But just the main point is just like, in case you don't know when our episodes are dropping, best way you can find out is make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, whether that's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. You can listen right at the LFP Network website as well. Hit that subscribe button. Always be up to date when all of our episodes are dropping. Same thing with YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also make sure you're subscribing to LFB Network's YouTube channel because they have a lot of great content in the summer as well, covering both the Chargers and the Rams on the NFL level. And then, of course, they're covering the Trojans and the Bruins at the college level. So they got a lot of great content for you guys as well. We're going to be trying to drop some articles in the summer. I know we keep saying it every time, but I think we focus more on the podcast and the video stuff more during this the first beginning part of this year. But yeah, I think in the summer we may be dropping some more articles with some fantasy related content. We'll hopefully be getting into our new head coaching series pretty soon. So we're going to talk about all the new head coaching hires that have happened recently. So that may be an article, maybe some episodes. We're still figuring all that out. But just guys, make sure you're reading all the great articles on there, not just by us, but by LFB Network as well. But guys, to everybody who's interacting with us on social media, who's watching, who's listening, who's reading articles, I mean, just guys, anything and everything in everything that you're doing to support us, we really can't thank you enough.
Nailed that landing. But a real quick funny story was a friend of mine made a joke in our group message last night of like, this was Tad's reaction when Anthony Richardson got drafted. And it kind of made me think. So when I got home, I actually did, rewatch, not the entire thing. Good God, no. I rewatched our live stream and my reaction with Anthony Richardson. It wasn't my reaction that I found funniest. It was like, I don't know, 2 minutes after I returned back to the mic because I need to calm down. America goes, yes, we have some comments coming in. And I was like, oh, God damn it. And the next 5 minutes we were talking about these comments. It was so funny. And it just kind of hit me. I'm like, God, I love our fans because it was hilarious. Like, that's why I said, oh, God damn it during the stream, because I was like, I knew it was coming. And it was absolutely great interacting with you guys. It was so much fun knowing that you guys knew how to get on my nerves, and you definitely did. And it was funny, and it was great, and it was a ton of fun. So keep up that type of interaction. Like Amir said, down by the ticker. And just keep coming with show ideas. I mean, we just did an ultimate team episode. You think that was planned, 3 weeks ago? No, we were like, yeah, that sounds fun. Let's do that. So if you have any ideas, if you have any episodes that you want us to do, let us know, because we are wide open for the next month or so to do basically whatever we want. So whatever we want is to do what you guys want to listen to. So let us know. As always, everyone, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And as always, please stay safe. Now, Mer, what do I hit?